afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Louisville Cardinals, who are playing for the ACC title this weekend. And in Maryland, my good friend, my good longtime friend, John Webster, home of the Maryland Terrapins, who are headed to another bowl game. How you doing, John?
Hey, Gary. I'm doing really good, man. Another good day, another good week, and another good weekend in sports. Everything is going well. I know we got some exciting stuff to talk about today with the NFL and some NCAA football stuff. Unfortunately, our friend John Pitt is a little under the weather, so we aren't going to. We'll just say hi to him, and that's it, because he's not feeling well at all. So, John, we hope you feel better real soon. But with that being said, Gary, let's roll, man.
So where to start? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Some changes in Washington with the Commanders. Uh, wow. It was coming at some point with Jack Del Rio. Honestly, I felt like it was going to come later, really come after the season, because I've always questioned the wisdom of releasing a coach, especially a position coach, in midseason. But with that defense, the defensive coordinator had to go. I think there were two other departures that all of a sudden they're slipping my mind. But you probably know those off the top of your head. So, John, was it the right thing to do at this point, or would you have waited until after the season?
Well, as I've said before, Gary, 90% of the time when you're making an in-season change, nothing's really going to change. I guess the exception to the rule right now would be the Buffalo Bills and what they're able to do. But they made a change. I don't know if you saw the game Thursday against the Cowboys.
Oh,
The,
yeah,
the
I
whole
watched it.
the whole bottom, the whole bottom came out completely. Now, you asked me, should Del Rio be fired? And I always remember something my dad said to me. And I was a young kid, you go around yelling, so and so should be fired, or why did they fire so and so, and they should have got rid of so and so. And my dad would always say, "Well, Johnny, can't fire the whole team. You got to fire somebody."
Mm-hmm.
So Del Rio, unfortunately, uh, he was let go. I can't think of the defensive back coach's name. He was let go. But the thing is, Gary, as you let these two go, you still have to play. The same players are still there.
Mm-hmm.
Rivera is going to take over the defense. He's going to call the signals. Are they going to play any differently? And he says he's going to change a couple of things. He may simplify it some, but I still say what I've always said. It's mid-season. You've learned one system through training camp. Now you're going to. I don't know. I can't see it making any difference. They play Miami this week, so they need every defensive back they can get to be on board. It's just not a pretty thing here in this area with the Washington Commanders. Uh,
It could be
it's just
worse.
not.
It could be, you could be the Carolina Panthers, who seem to be letting everybody go.
What's that? Tepper's owned the team for 5 years, and he's had 4 coaches.
Yeah, I think he'll be hiring his fourth coach in 5 years or something like that. And I'll just say it like this, Frank, look, as much as we love Frank Reich in Maryland, for what he did at Maryland, but he, just for other things that he did at other stops. I mean, that franchise is a dumpster fire, and I can't say too much bad about them, because Washington is smoldering. They're not quite on fire, but they're smoldering garbage. And I'm gonna say it like that because it is what it is. And and really, I'm gonna point the finger at the defense because with Rivera taking over, okay, fine. Your question is valid. What are they going to do now? But what we saw on Thanksgiving Day, what we could stomach on Thanksgiving Day, was rinse and repeat from every daggone game we've seen this year. Like you said, the bottom fell out, but in essence, the bottom was falling out every week. I mean, it's like carrying a paper bag, a wet paper bag, and you've got like a 16-pound turkey in it, and it just finally gives way. But it was building with every step you're taking toward the car or toward the house.
It, it, it just was rough. They were right there for a good part of definitely the first half and through the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the defense just they it fell out because if you remember in the third quarter alone, the Commanders went for fourth down 3 times and did not get it on all 3 occasions.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, that whole fourth quarter was a 25-point barrage. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what I'm saying. The bottom fell out. You keep holding them. And what I'm going to say, and I'll preface it by saying I think the enemy's doing a good job. But when he
Yeah, if you
had
look at
third
Sam
and one,
Howell's numbers, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, he's doing a wonderful job with Sam Howell, but the play calling is horrendous. Whoever is doing it,
well, he's doing the play
horrendous.
call. He's doing the play call, and I may be a little bit more kinder and not call it horrendous. I understand where you're coming from, but one example I'll say
You
is
just mentioned it.
if
Three,
is
three,
third third and
one
one,
down. Yeah,
third and one, and he called a pass play, called for a short bomb, and then came back and ran it. They should have just continue to run it. I will say this over and over and over and over and over.
breach.
Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. If you run the ball more, Howell becomes more effective. His numbers are going to come down, but he's going to be a more effective quarterback. He's slinging it like Gary. I'm going to take you way back. He's slinging it like Dan Fouts. He's slinging it like Jim Hart. That's what he's slinging, and he doesn't even have the line that those two guys have. He's
Mm-hmm.
slinging it and running for his life.
Mm-hmm.
You got to continue to run it. You got to establish the run, and it's not about your stats. It's about the wins. I go back to Joe Jackson Gibbs when Joe Gibbs won, not Joe Gibbs 2, Joe Gibbs 1. They started off 0-5, and they had the best ranked offense in the NFL, but they were 0-5. They changed. They hitched their horses to a guy named John Riggins, and they started running the ball. They had some guys up front called the Hogs. They started blocking and continued to block in open holes. The run sets up the pass. And this offseason, they got to get some linemen. They got to draft them or free agency. You got to get some linemen. That's a key. I think Sam Howell is doing good this year. I think he could be better if he was able to have a balance of run. Yes, fans. Yes, people who are listening to the show and watch the Commanders. Yes, they are running more, but they're not running enough, and they're not running at key times. It's still too much passing, and you don't have the personnel to sling it over the field. You don't.
Yep. John, you know how much I hate being cute in power situations. I hate finesse in power situations. Run the ball. Pete Carroll, you were talking about Joe Jackson Gibbs in 1981. The thing I'm trying to remember about that year was that the year that Riggins held out, or was that 1980?
He held out 80, the last year
Yeah,
Pardee, because the
that's right.
year
That was
before,
the 6 and 10 years, something
yeah,
like
because the
that.
year before they had gone 10-6, lost
Yeah.
to Dallas on the last game of the season, And then the
Mhm.
next year, Riggins didn't play. Parties last year, they went 6-10.
Yeah, that's right. That was the holdout year. Well, I look at it this way, and this is where it changed. The whole dynamic changed for me forever about what you should do. Seattle Seahawks versus the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. You've got beast mode waiting to just catch the ball. I mean, to take the handoff, punch it in, win the Super Bowl. Number two, they established themselves as probably one could have established themselves as the dominant team of their era. What do? They call a pass and it gets intercepted. John, the thing I remember about that day is even people who don't follow football were screaming, "What are you doing?" I was with people who were saying, "What are you doing? You should have run the ball." And I'll just leave it at that. I've seen it in college. And, I mean, I've seen it right here in Kentucky, not necessarily in Louisville, but with another school that had 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Instead of punching it, you decide to get cute and you were exposed as the ugly duckling. That's it. No, there was no beauty coming out of that. You were exposed as the ugly duckling. Just stop being cute and punch the ball in. It works for Philadelphia. The tush push, whatever you want to call it, it works. I think I want to say I saw it in oh God, did I see it in last night's game? But maybe I might have seen it in the Ravens game. That it still works. It's called power football. Bill Parcells relied on it, won Super Bowls with it, won games with it. Just stop being cute, NFL and college coaches.
Okay. But
That was
you
a
got to
lot.
give credit to the Cowboys. Cowboys were there too, and they beat the brakes off of them. They look
Yeah,
good. And,
yeah.
I'm gonna tell you this, Gary. If I'm the Commanders, I'm feeling like a fool because every time Dallas was scoring in the fourth quarter, they jump in that Salvation Army bucket and come out with a turkey leg and start eating it on the sideline. I mean, this is how disrespectful it got. I mean, it was 45-20. I mean, every time they score, somebody's
uh,
jumping in the kettle and
uh,
somebody's coming up with a turkey leg. Matter of fact, they come up with 2 or 3 legs and give it to everybody else on right there with them.
John, I'm sorry, but I have to admit, I kind of like it. When they put the first time they pulled out the turkey leg and gave it to Dak. I'm not kidding, man. I was hollering, laughing, and
That
everybody who
just
was
shows
watching the game with me, we just thought that was just funny. I should be mad because it was against my hometown team, but again, it's like I like watching NFL guys have fun. After a big play, you don't have to always run to the opposite end zone and pose and all that stuff. But it's still kind of fun to watch. But that was entertaining to me.
it's
And
entertaining.
and
I
and
agree. I agree with you. It's entertaining. But if you're the
it,
Commanders, you gotta be sitting here like, man, this should not be happening. This
no,
should not be
no,
happening.
no, you're right. And that's and that really speaks volumes about what's wrong with that team, not just what happened in that game, but what's wrong with that team. Dallas had fun at Washington's expense. It shouldn't surprise anybody because, again, for all the offense, for all that Sam Howell is doing, it's the same thing, John. They're not running the ball enough. You got 2 power backs. In fact, when they started running Chris Rodriguez in the fourth quarter, and I was like, and of course, being here in Kentucky, people I was watching it with, even people in Louisville I was watching it with, were saying, well, it's about damn time. Excuse my language, but that's what they were saying. It's like, you got a power back. You have 2 power backs, in fact, with Brian Robinson. Why didn't you use them? Why didn't you use them? And again, these are people who, admittedly, I mean, like older people who don't know football as well as, like, say, the generation that we come from have watched the NFL enough. And I think that's the thing that's just really upsetting to me about the state of the NFL in particular. And, it's like what I've what I've said for a long time, that there, of 32 NFL teams, maybe 6 to 8 of them are truly concerned with winning games and winning championships. The rest are collecting paychecks and social media likes, and that's the God's honest truth. I mean, they won't never say it, but John, that's just how I feel.
Well, in the Commanders' case, you're playing it out for the rest of the season. They're four and I think they're 4-8
Again,
now. You're playing out for the rest of the season. Next 5 games, you got Dallas. What else you got? You got Miami. I think you got San Francisco. I think maybe the Rams too. But you're just playing it out now, and you
yeah,
go from there. I don't know
you're
what's
playing
going to
spoiler.
happen at.
That's about
I
it.
don't. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the season. Had to see, but
Yeah.
I tell you what though, Gary. As bad as the Commanders looked, that was a pretty good game with the Eagles and the Bills, wasn't it?
Oh man, John, that was really a fun game to watch. And okay, in one respect, I feel bad for Buffalo losing, but they made it a game. They overcame some self-inflicted wounds, and to set up overtime. But the way that game ended was just absolutely perfect, and it reinforced what I've said about Philadelphia all season, that wasn't a perfect game. Jalen Hurts committed his share of mistakes, but they're winning games, and they still haven't played their perfect game yet. And really, I hope they don't play their perfect game, because you really want to leave something on the table. You don't want to play your best in late November. You want to be playing your best in January, or late December and January. So a game like that, it was entertaining. It showed really who might be the MVP in this league is in Jalen Hurts. And
And
I don't hesitate in saying that, because I think just the way that it's not just managing the game, the way he can command a game, even when he's not at his best. And let's keep in mind with Jalen Hurts, this is his 3rd year. And, it's there is still a learning curve with him, as you could see on some of his throws, on some of his decisions. Because, remember, for I think a half, he ignored his best receiver. And I was thinking, that is not going to go over well. He has got to start weaving them in. I understand about weaving other guys in and spreading the ball around and not becoming, predictable. But when he started hitting other receivers, all of a sudden you see that double coverage backing off a little bit. They would start playing that soft zone, and he started going to his boy again. He made the other team adjust to him.
at the end of the day, Devontae Smith is like his security blanket. They
Yeah,
shut
that's
down
true.
They shut down AJ Brown
Mm-hmm.
again. And then who's the one that made the key catches? Who's the one that had a key touchdown? Devontae Smith.
Yeah,
He is tough as nails and a good ball player. And Philadelphia, you take your hat off to them. They're playing great. They're in first place. They got the best record in the NFC. They still got some tough games coming. They got San Francisco, Dallas, and Seattle coming up. That's not going to be easy. We'll
yeah,
see what's going to happen. But right now, they're playing great, Gary.
yeah,
Well, let me rephrase that. They're finding a way to win every week, and
yeah.
I'll say that's the sign of a very good team.
Mm-hmm.
When everything is not rolling right, they're still finding a way. They're a very good team. I'll say that. They're a
Yeah,
very good team. They, as you said, they haven't played great yet. They haven't put it all together, but it's the sign of a good team when something's still failing you and you still find a way to succeed.
yeah, indeed. Well, John, let's move down to the lower level of college and talk about a lot of the developments there. Of course, this weekend we've got conference championship games, and of course everybody's paying attention to the Power 5 conferences rather. I think the Big Ten is pretty much a foregone conclusion for Michigan and your boy, Coach Kaki. And I can't remember, does he return this weekend?
He's back on the sidelines this week, and
Yeah.
it's not a given they're going to beat Iowa. Iowa's defense is
Oh,
tough.
yeah.
Their offense is leaves a lot to be desired, but their defense and their special teams, they got a kick return. I can't remember this kid's name. He's one of the best in NCAA. So,
Yeah, but I know who you're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, it's when I say it's a foregone conclusion, I feel like Michigan is the team to beat just because they are going to nickel and dime you. You know, I don't want to say they're going to toy with you, but they're not going to continually beat you, you know, with explosive plays. You know, really, I think they can beat Iowa with Iowa's game. You know, Iowa is a scrappy team.
Mm-hmm.
They you know, I think, well, God, I can't remember who they beat the week before. I watched them. Oh, the way that they squeaked out a game against Nebraska, that, you know, whatever about the extra 10 to 15 seconds or whatever on the clock, it was still just a matter of, you know, if they had the ball last, they were probably going to kick the field goal, and they just do enough to get in the field goal range, you know, which was pretty much their savior that whole game, and they won. So you can't take them for granted. No, you know, I mean, even if you're Michigan, but what I like about Michigan, just like they beat my Ohio State Buckeyes, it wasn't it wasn't like dominant, but they got the plays when they needed to. And this is what I called, you know, say the nickel and diming that they do, that they could have 2 or 3 empty series and then all of a sudden string together a couple of drives and move the ball and score. And you know, defensively, they really exposed the Buckeyes' weaknesses at quarterback. That's another thing. Let's not forget how good that defense is. With Michigan. So, you know,
They're hands down. They're tough. Offense and defense, special teams, they're good. The
yeah,
thing that Iowa can't get behind like 10 or 14 points because they don't have the ability to come back. I
no,
think
no,
you know, Michigan, I mean, you got Blake Corum at the running back, and you got McCarthy at the quarterback, and they got good wideouts. They can't take them lightly, but Michigan is tough. Uh, I don't even want to think about the next step. I just need them to win this Saturday.
yeah,
Take care of this game, and welcome back, Coach Kaki.
yep. It's going to be interesting. I think the game. Well, actually, the 2 title games everybody's going to be watching are the SEC, Georgia and Alabama, and the Pac-12. Well, yeah, basically the farewell of the Pac-12 before it becomes the Pac-3 between Washington and Oregon. And the SEC might be the most intriguing one because Alabama is playing, you know, everybody thought this was going to be a down year for Alabama, and here they are. They go unbeaten in league play. They develop Jalen Milroe into a quarterback who I think a year from now we're going to be talking about this kid for the Heisman. He can do it with his legs. He can do it with his arm. On the other sideline, you've got Carson Beck, who is getting it done, much the same way Stetson Bennett was getting it done. Now you've got Brock Bowers back, you know, healthy again. It's like there are so many weapons on both sides. I really can't pick a game, pick a winner of this game, John. All I feel like is whoever wins this game it makes the playoffs. I think the SEC sends 2 teams. I really do.
They send 2 teams. You're saying if Alabama wins, they're
Yeah,
not
if
sending
I'm
2
sorry,
teams.
yeah, if Alabama wins, yeah, they send 2 teams. Yeah, and if Alabama wins, I think it's Alabama, Georgia, Michigan if they win, and whoever the winner of the Pac-12 is. And again, Washington and Oregon, Washington, won the first meeting. Oregon is playing its best ball right now too, and I think that's a team that really, really bears watching. And it's a shame that you can't get two Pac-12 teams in there, but I don't know. I'll say it like this, John. If Georgia wins, I'd say you could make a case for the loser of the Pac-12 championship game to get in there. I really believe that. What do you think?
Well, if Georgia, well, let me answer the second part of it first. If Oregon loses, Oregon's not getting in
Right.
because they got 2 losses. They're not getting in. They're done. If
Mm-hmm.
they win, then they got 1 loss, and Washington has 1 loss. You still got this Florida State team that nobody's looking at, and I've said myself, I think they're the weakest of the top 4, probably the top 5 or 6. I think they're the weakest.
Mm-hmm.
But if they beat
And
Louisville,
they might lose that game, and it could be academic, and
a
and
lot
and
of
and,
people,
and that's really, I'm not saying anything bad about Florida State there, but maybe I'm just saying it's reflective of the ACC, and I say that as someone who covers Louisville, and I just think that Florida State, especially since they lost Jordan Travis for the season, that they're not being looked at. Even if Florida State wins that game, I don't know if they're going to get enough love to get into the playoff, because the fact that they are on the outside looking in at number 5, that they almost have to win their way in convincingly, or win convincingly to even get those extra votes to get back into that top 4.
I think a lot of people are hoping Florida State loses Saturday because it simplifies things.
Yeah.
So if Louisville beats them, then Florida State becomes an afterthought. And then you look at Alabama, Georgia, you look at Iowa playing Michigan, and you figure that out from there. And then you look at Oregon playing Washington. You also have a 1-loss Texas team. I think some people are hoping Oklahoma State beats Texas
Yeah.
because that will simplify things.
Yeah.
What really complicates things, honestly, to me, Gary, more than anything else, if Alabama beats Georgia, that really, you go from basic math to trig analysis. That's what you're going to. If Alabama beats Georgia, that's going to be a lot of problems, a lot of figuring out, because think back a couple weeks ago, we had our good friend AP Stidham on here. AP said, if Alabama beats Georgia, neither one of them get in. Remember, he said that. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
And, I don't know about you. I could be wrong. I can't remember a college football playoff without an SEC team in there. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's been their domain for something like 8 of the last 12 championships.
I
Yeah.
can't think of a year where they've had a college football playoff and there was not SEC representation.
Yeah.
So Alabama or Georgia, one of them is getting in. If maybe both, like you said, but a lot of things have to happen for both of them to get in. Michigan hopefully will beat Iowa. They'll get in. And then you go from there. If Oregon beats Washington, that's 1 loss. And Gary, I'll tell you something. They keep talking about all these doggone computers and how they calculating and percolating and getting all this information coming out. That's human beings sitting in that room. And you're going to make a decision that's based upon what you think is best for the college football playoff. And what am I saying? Somebody's going to be sitting outside crying because they're not going to get in. If things fall a certain way, trust me, if things fall a certain way, if Alabama beats Georgia, if Oregon beats Washington, if Oklahoma State beats Texas, somebody's going to be at home crying, because that's 3 teams with one loss. You got 4 spots, and Michigan probably get in. I like Alabama, but they may lose to Georgia. So if they lose to Georgia, Georgia's getting in. So that means 3 teams for 2 more spots. But it gets real crazy if Alabama beats Georgia. Now all of a sudden you got one team, Michigan, that's for sure if they beat Iowa, and now you got 3 spots and 5 teams with one loss.
Yeah. Now what if Texas wins?
Then you got a problem because you got Texas with one loss, Alabama with one loss. You'd have Georgia with one loss. You'd have Oregon with one loss and Washington with one loss. That's 5 teams with one loss. Texas' claim to fame is we went to Tuscaloosa and we beat Alabama right in Alabama's field.
Yep.
We kicked their butts.
And to me, that gets Texas into the field as they should, because that is a tiebreaker. Of course, Alabama has to do the tough part and beat Georgia this weekend to get to really muddy the waters. And again, John, to me, that's just such a toss-up because the way that Alabama came to Lexington and dismantled Kentucky, and of course, it's happened with a lot of teams that Kentucky has faced here lately, the exception of Louisville. But I was so impressed with Jalen Milroe and what he was able to do with his arm and then with his feet. But he did a lot of damage with his arm against Kentucky. And there were questions about him after that Texas game, whether he was going to be that quarterback. And remember, he was benched for that next game when they played South Florida, but came back, and he has been a different quarterback. In fact, I think up until, I'll say that 2-game stretch where Alabama played LSU and Kentucky, Milroe accounted for 10 touchdowns in 2 games. I didn't even see what we hadn't even gotten into the Iron Bowl and that finish. That's and that was another one that might have raised his profile in terms of Heisman consideration. I repeat, he's probably more a front runner, a candidate for next year, but he's making a case for himself to maybe get a little bit of consideration. And before we move on to some other things in college football, let's talk about the Heisman race. Who do you like? I'm a big fan of Jaden Daniels. I've seen him enough to really be impressed with him, but you've probably seen more of Bo Nix out west. So you tell me, who do you like?
Well, Bo Nix, what's the kid's name in Oregon? Penix? Is that Penix?
Oh, well, he said what? He said Washington.
Bo Nix is at Washington.
No, wait a minute.
Bo Nix is at Oregon.
Yeah,
Bo Nix is at Oregon. Is at
Washington.
Yeah. Penix is, I'm sorry, I'm a little backwards here. Both of them are really good. The kid Saturday, he played a decent game. Cam Ward, Washington State. He kept them right there, and they almost pulled off an upset. We'll see what's going to happen. Daniels has played well, has had a good season too. We just have to see what's going to happen, man. We'll see.
Yeah. So, okay. Coach hirings. Texas A&M hires Mike Elko from Duke. Here in Kentucky, there was I don't want to say consternation. I'll say it like this. There was concern, there was acceptance, and then there was relief when Mark Stoops said, he's staying at Kentucky. There are a whole lot of reasons, a lot of speculation as to why he decided to stay. There's speculation as to whether Texas A&M might have changed its mind about him, and Elko became their candidate. I have my feelings about that I have to keep to myself because I'm being objective about the team that I cover. I do think Mark Stoops is a great coaching candidate for some jobs. I'm not a fan of coaches jumping to other teams within their conference because you have to prove that you can beat the heavyweights at the school that you're at in that conference before you go to another conference school. That's what I think the uh, criteria should be, and I think that was probably the thing that may have worked against Stoops ultimately. But again, we don't even know if an offer was made. And again, there's just so much speculation. But I'm going to say it like this: Mike Elko was the logical choice all along. I never thought that they would look anywhere but the guy who was just there 2 or 3 years ago as defensive coordinator, and went to Duke and basically turned Duke into a giant killer and into I'd say a formidable program in the league. That injuries to their quarterback pretty much doomed them. But remember what they did to Clemson. Remember how they fought Notre Dame, and and really they were a player for more than a half a season in the ACC before Louisville got a hold of them. But I think when Elko, gosh, I'm trying to think of which game it was, but I feel like Elko made himself the top candidate when they beat Clemson, when they shut out Clemson. I repeat, when they shut out Clemson, and he became the choice everybody wanted.
In life, and I know we're getting close to the end, so I'll try to hurry it up, Gary, on what I'm going to say. But in life, sometimes you got to look at the jobs you get and the jobs you don't get. And sometimes you have to look at yourself and realize, is a place really for you? Mark Stoops, I think, made the best decision, whether it was made for him or he made it himself.
Yeah.
You're at Kentucky. If you win 8 games, 9 games, and every now and then you win 10, you are a hero. Because don't forget, the number one sport in Lexington, Kentucky is and will always be basketball.
Preach.
So he doesn't have the pressure Calipari has.
No.
And sometimes I think people, not just the football coaches, I think people in life, in other sports too, you look at the dollars, but you don't really look at, is that the situation that is best for you? You're going to go from Kentucky to go to Texas A&M, and they don't want 8 wins. They want 10 wins. They want 11 wins, and they want you to beat Alabama every year. That ain't going to happen.
Yep.
I can't even think the last time Stoops beat Alabama. I mean, but
well, that's what I'm saying. That's the thing. He has yet to beat Alabama or Georgia.
Guess what, though, Gary? Guess what? He has yet to beat Georgia. He has yet to beat Alabama, and he's still a rock star in Lexington.
Yeah. And well, yeah, he's something of a rock star. I mean, yeah, he's come under heat for not being able to beat those 2 schools. And to that, I say, really, folks, we're talking about Georgia and Alabama. And this is where you have to understand your limitations and stay in your lane. And I'm going to say this, it might get me in trouble, but I'm going to say it as diplomatically as possible. You better hold on to a Mark Stoops because, again, like you said, 8 wins, anywhere from 7 to 9 wins, and maybe every 3 or 4 years or so you win 10 games. That's gravy. Any program will take that. Ask Maryland whether they would take 8, 9, 10 wins every year, or 10 wins every 2 or 3 years. Of course they would. You have to realize in the SEC, especially with adding Oklahoma and Texas next year, that upper tier, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Ole Miss, you're talking about 6 teams. That's who you have to hurdle, and there are no divisions. And it's a tough, steep hill you got to climb. That second tier, Tennessee, Kentucky, maybe
Vanderbilt.
Mississippi State.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah. I said middle tier, not the footrest, not the doormat. But I don't think that there's any shame in being in that second tier and being competitive against them. And John, I remember when I got here and Joker Phillips was the coach, and they got waxed by Vanderbilt at home. And Franklin was the coach, who's now at Penn State. And the next day, Joker Phillips was fired. They bring in Stoops, and everybody loved it because he was coming from Florida State. But here's the thing: that you didn't have you had to struggle every maybe 3 or 4 years just to have a winning record at Kentucky. That was a big thing then. I think it was not since Rich Brooks did they have, I think he was the only one to win maybe 4 bowl games in a row. That was considered a golden era. And they're going to their 8th bowl game and have a chance to win their 6th in 8 years. You better accept that, because the team, the school that might come looking for Mark Stoops, and I could say he might take it, might be Iowa, where he played. And you better enjoy him while you've got him. You're paying him $9 million a year. You can debate whether he earns it or not. And I'm just going to close by saying this. If Mark Stoops leaves, Bear Bryant ain't walking through that door. Urban Meyer ain't walking through that door. Nick Saban ain't walking through that door. You better take who you have right now, because you could go back to 2012 and be that team all over again.
Well said, my friend. Close us out, Gary. Take us on home.
Man, whew, you got me worked up about some things with the NFL and college. Again, this is the great thing about this time of year. It's rivalry week. Well, last week was rivalry week. Now it's championship week. And now we will see which cream rises to the top in the Power 5 conferences and in the playoffs. It's a great week. It's a great week for the NFL, because now we're entering that time, John, Saturday football games. Another week, we have the greatest rivalry in college football, Army-Navy, and they're playing it in Foxborough, I do believe. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. So,
and Gary, guess what? Guess what, Gary? Guess what? For one weekend in Foxborough, you'll have real football.
Good point. Well, I don't know, because Navy's kind of hurting right now, aren't they?
I still would take either one of them before I take New England.
Well,
and I love the Patriots.
Yeah.
But I digress. Close us out.
Yeah. So anyway, you hear this from us every week. Folks, watch sports, take your mind off your everyday problems, take your mind off stuff. Really, I mean, you need a release from reality. You need a release from family, all kinds of other stuff. Heck, you probably need release from dogs that are probably doing things that they shouldn't be doing around your house. But we watch sports because they are the release. Come back and see us next week. Watch us in the meantime on YouTube, on Facebook. We'll send you the link. I'm trying to think of other places. We might even tweet it out. Who knows? So, John, watch sports. I'll see you again here next week.
Hey, thanks for checking us out. Watch some sports this weekend. You got great football games coming up, college and the NFL, NBA basketball, NCAA basketball, men's and women's. Great time to watch some sports.
Amen.
Watch it. Come back and see us real soon.